Next question from Sarah Laplante.
La plante, elle parle français.
Do you think that English Canada hates French Canada,
Uh-oh.
as in Quebec? I'm from Quebec, and I feel like all Canada hates us. Ha ha.
Aw.
Ooh, this is kind of a sensitive topic in
On ne
Canada.
vous déteste pas. Okay, Sarah?
No, I think the short answer is I don't think English Canada hates French Canada, but there is a lot of baggage and context to this conversation. Maybe we'll sort of like briefly get into it.
Yeah.
This isn't a
How do we
conversation
explain
about
this
the
to
politics of French Canada.
How do we explain this to someone living in Iowa?
Yeah, so when European settlers first came over to Canada, there were British and French colonies, and then they fought. And to really oversimplify
then
things,
they fought.
The British won, but they said, hey, New France area over here, you can kind of do your own thing to some degree. There's definitely like a French identity and culture preserved within Canada that way.
Yeah.
In more recent history, and not that long ago, like I remember hearing about this as a kid. I think in the early 90s, there was a referendum, and Quebec, the province of Quebec, where the French Canadians are, they had a vote on if they should separate from Canada. And the vote was like 51% we want to stay to 49% we want to leave. I think a lot of Anglo-English Canadians remember that, because it's almost like knowing your partner came like 49% close to breaking up with you and wanting to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there is some mental baggage from that still, even though like in contemporary Canadian politics, there was really no discussion about Quebec separating from Canada. It feels like that was a long time ago, but I think there is sort of that baggage in the back of your mind. And then I think Quebecers are very proud of their French identity within Canada, but I think they can also be quite sensitive to that French identity within Canada. So even at times where English Canada might have some valid criticisms, or if an English writer in a big English newspaper would dare to talk about like corruption in French politics, I think French Canada is very sensitive to that sort of narrative, or anything that could be perceived as insulting to the French identity in Canada. Anyway, I feel like I'm kind of treading on weird ground here, but I guess I should summarize it in the sense that I think a lot of English-speaking Canada really likes the fact that Quebec is a part of Canada, and they bring a lot to the table, especially from like a cultural perspective.
And a linguistic perspective. Like, I like knowing I am not French, but I learned how to speak French as a child, and I still do at work sometimes. I'll speak French. Yeah. And I like using it, and it allows you to speak with more people. You can communicate in different ways. Obviously, I'm not an expert at it, but I don't know if people know this, but in Canada, technically, according to certain laws, if you print packaging on a product, like in order to sell something in a store, it has to have both English and French labeling on the product.
But that's why, like, I don't think a lot of English Canada looks at our two official languages as a positive thing. Our government spends a lot of money translating things, and it puts a lot of burden on maybe, like, you know, even small businesses in Western Canada that have no French population having this expectation of signage really being in two languages.
When we were developing Holo Taco, which is based and made in the States, but when we were thinking about possibly maybe it comes to Canada one day, maybe it's sold in stores, I don't know.
Yes.
If that were ever to happen, then legally we would have to change all of our packaging, change the bottle, and there would need to be a French translation of everything, from the word nail polish to all the ingredients, everything. So that's always something to consider if you're American trying to sell something in Canada.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of companies want to expand to Canada and then realize, oh wow, we have to change all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different roads to go down, but I don't think it's fair to say that English Canada hates French Canada. I think there is a very long and complicated history involved in that relationship.
I mean, we can't speak for all of English Canada. We live in Ottawa, which is 10 minutes away from Quebec.
Rob from Red Deer. We don't necessarily speak from him. You know?
Rob or Joe, Billy Bob. But also, I think proximity matters, because we live and work 10 minutes away from Quebec. So we often cross paths with people who live in Quebec just like they cross paths with people from Ottawa. So I don't think there's as much hostility when there's already going to be a lot of overlap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're kind of on the border anyways. I don't know how people far out,
Maybe
the other
French
side of
people
Canada feel.
just resent that technically the Queen is our head of state. Actually, I wonder, people probably don't know that. I saw another question, I don't think we included it, just asking like you have a president, or like what do you have? And yeah, the most obvious answer, or what most people think, is like, yeah, we have a prime minister who's elected. Right now it's Justin Trudeau. You've probably heard of him. But technically, Canada was a British colony, and even though it's very much in a symbolic way, technically the Queen is still our head of state. And
That's why she's on our money.
The Queen is on our money, smelling like maple syrup.
I don't mind having a woman on the money, though. So I'll take her.
Yeah, she seems all right.
Her or a loon.
If it was anything other than symbolic in most people's minds, though, I think a lot of Canadians would have an issue with it, right? Like, we have a Governor General who's basically the Queen's representative in Canada. And in a very symbolic way, like, that will be the person who, like, has to call an election or something like that. But since the Statute of Westminster in 1932 or something like that, Canada has really governed itself and has been independent in how it governs itself as a nation, independent of Britain. So,
I kind of like our connection to the UK and Britain, though.
I think a lot of people do, and a lot of people care about the monarchy here for some reason still, in a weird way.
Yeah, I don't really care about the hysteria
So
around that.
what do you like about it?
But I like tea. I really like...
I was expecting like the serious answer.
I love the tea.
I prefer Canadian David's tea. Use code SIMPLY for 20% off for a limited time. With the link down below.
Yeah, iced tea season. Use my code.
Do you think the Queen drinks iced tea?
Do you think the Queen drinks David's tea?
Maybe we should send her a
Probably
care
not.
package.
Well,
She should. She doesn't know what she's
She
missing.
doesn't know. She's just peachy. Oh my God, that'll blow her mind. It'll blow her crown right off.
All right, next question.